This is the material for week number 5, and it is entitled The Phrase. As you know, we have already been finished with 2 units on the rank scale, and these 2 units are the morpheme and the word. We have already seen that a morpheme can form a word, but not every morpheme can form a word. All independent morphemes can form words on their own. We have already mentioned that a word in turn is made up of 1 or more morphemes. If 1 morpheme, then that morpheme has to be an independent morpheme. We have also seen that a word may form a phrase, but not every word can form a phrase. Articles, for instance, prepositions cannot form phrases on their own. A phrase in turn, which is our topic today, is made up of 1 or more words. So a phrase may be made up of 1 or more words. Now, how many types of phrases do we have? We have 5 types of phrases. We have noun phrases, adjective phrases, adverb phrases, verb phrases, and prepositional phrases. As you can see in the chart on the first page of this handout, see, every one of these phrases takes its name after a single word category. So the noun phrase takes its name after the noun. The adjective phrase takes its name after the adjective. The adverb phrase takes its name after the adverb. The verb phrase takes its name after the verb, namely the lexical verb. And a prepositional phrase takes its name after the preposition. In each of these phrases, you see, the single word category after which the phrase takes its name is said to be or referred to as the dominant member in the phrase. So that in the noun phrase, the dominant member is the noun. In the adjective phrase, the dominant member is the adjective. In the adverb phrase, the dominant member is the adverb. In the verb phrase, the dominant member is the lexical verb. In the prepositional phrase, the dominant member is the preposition. Now, you see, each of these dominant members may be preceded by elements and followed by elements, except for the lexical verb, which cannot be followed by any elements. It can be preceded by 1 or more elements, that is auxiliary verbs. So that we can talk of and about the relationship in between the dominant member and the other members surrounding the dominant member. We can refer to this relationship in the noun phrase, the adjective phrase, the adverb phrase, and the lexical verb, and the verb phrase, in terms of the relationship is a relationship of subordination. What this means is that any member surrounding the noun in the noun phrase, any member surrounding the adjective in the adjective phrase, any member surrounding the adverb phrase, any member, that is any auxiliary verb preceding the lexical verb, is in a subordinate relationship to the dominant member. Meaning the other members are, as you can see, optional. They are optional, that is why they are available in dotted lines. Only the dominant member is obligatory in the noun phrase, that is the noun. In the adjective phrase, the adjective. In the adverb phrase, the adverb. In the verb phrase, the lexical verb. In the prepositional phrase, the preposition. However, whereas the relationship in between the dominant member and the other members in the phrase, in noun phrases, adjective phrases, adverb phrases, and verb phrases, where the relationship in between the dominant member and the other members is a relationship of subordination, the relationship in between the preposition and the obligatory member following it, that is its complement, is a relationship of government. Why government? Because the preposition governs its complement. In what sense? In the sense that if its complement, that is, if it is followed by a pronoun, especially a personal pronoun, it has to be in the objective case. In other words, we say the preposition governs its complement. As you can see, I gave the book to her. I cannot say I gave the book to she. It's ungrammatical to say to she. Okay? So this is as far as you see the relationship in between the dominant member in each of these phrases and the elements surrounding it. Moving on to now the noun phrase. You see, in the noun phrase, we have the head, because the head can replace the whole phrase. Okay, the phrase, the head in a noun phrase, i.e. the noun, can replace the whole phrase. The head in an adjective phrase, that is an adjective, can replace the whole phrase. The head in an adverb phrase can replace the whole phrase. In verb phrases, we do not talk of the head, we talk about the dominant member, and in the prepositional phrase as well. And the dominant member in a verb phrase is always a lexical verb. So now, back to the noun phrase. So the noun phrase should have a head, and the head is most often a noun. But the head may be accompanied by two other functions, a modifier and a determiner. These occur optionally. In other words, the noun phrase may be made up of only the head. However, the function modifier may show up in either one of three forms, either a pre-modifier before the head, or a post-modifier after the head, or a discontinuous modifier surrounding the head of the phrase. Now, semantically speaking, modifiers are either descriptive or classifying. A descriptive modifier would be something like a tall boy. By descriptive is meant it describes the noun for a certain quality, and it can be pre-modified by means of an intensifying adverb. Like I can say, Muhammad is a very tall boy, not just tall. So very in here pre-modifies tall. So tall is a descriptive modifier. Tall describes a quality of the boy. Now, a classifying modifier classifies the noun, describes the noun for a certain class, as a member of a certain class. It classifies the noun into two or more classes. So when I say they took the criminal to a criminal court, now criminal is, you see, a modifier, a pre-modifier. It is classifying because it classifies courts into criminal courts. That it does not mean that criminal, the court is criminal. No, what it means is that it is a court that is concerned with criminal cases, because we have other class of courts. We have first instance courts, we have appeals courts, we have Supreme Courts, we have martial courts, we have special courts, etc. Which means we cannot pre-modify the classifying adjective by means of an intensifying adverb. I cannot say they took the criminal to a very criminal court. Never. Therefore, very here, or criminal, that is the classifying modifier, describes a subclass of the noun. Now, noun phrases, in fact, have functions on the sentence level and as constituents of the phrase. On the sentence level, like nouns, they realize, functions, the functions: subject, direct object, indirect object, benefactor object, subject attribute, predicate, complement. But to these, we have added the function adverbial adjunct. So subject, the boy ate the apple. Direct object, I know the boy. Indirect object, I gave the boy an apple. That is, I gave an apple to the boy. Benefactor object, I bought the boy an apple. That is, I bought an apple for the boy. So the boy, you see, functions as a benefactor object because the verb associates with the preposition for. Subject attribute after a copula. This is the boy. Object attribute. They call their new baby Selma. Their new baby is the direct object. Selma is the object attribute. Predicator complement. Huda weighs 60 kilograms. I cannot passivize and say 60 kilograms are weighed by Huda. Adverbial adjunct. I saw Selma last week. When did you see Selma? Last week. Okay. And as constituents of the phrase, you see, it functions, the noun phrase functions either as a pre-modifier, or a post-modifier, or a prepositional complement, or in a position. So, as a pre-modifier, Susan is a movie star. Susan is a star. What kind of star is Susan? A movie star. Movie star is a compound noun, of course. Here, noun. An adjective. Selma is a 16-year-old girl. So, Selma is 16 years old. Okay, so Selma is 16 years old. Oops. Yes, it's 16 years old. So Selma is old. How old is Selma? She is 16 years old. In other words, 16 years, the noun phrase pre-modifies the adjective old. A noun phrase can pre-modify an adverb. It all happened a week later. Yes, it all happened later. When later? How later did it happen? A week, not a week, excuse me. A week later. It happened a week later. So a week, the noun phrase, functions as a pre-modifier of the adverb later. Preposition. A noun phrase can pre-modify. She is standing behind me. How far behind me is she standing? 3 yards. The noun phrase 3 yards pre-modifies the preposition behind. Second function, post-modifier. Post-modifier of a noun. A noun can post-modify a noun. I have 2 children. You were 8. Excuse me. I have 2 children. What about these children? They are of your age. Your age post-modifies the head of the noun phrase children. A prepositional complement. They gave a prize to the scientist. So to is a preposition. It has to have a prepositional complement. The noun phrase the scientist functions as its complement. In opposition to another noun phrase. Bill Gates, a very rich man, has donated a big amount of his wealth to charitable organizations. So now, the noun phrase a very rich man is said to be in opposition to Bill Gates. That is badal. Okay? This is as far as the noun phrase. Moving on to the adjective phrase, and the head of an adjective phrase must always be an adjective, and the function head may optionally be accompanied with the function modifier. And the function modifier is optional, only the head is obligatory, like the noun, the head of the noun phrase. Now the function modifier may be seen as a pre-modifier before the head, a post-modifier after the head, or a discontinuous modifier surrounding the head. Now we come to the syntactic functions of adjective phrases. Adjective phrases may be used as constituents of the sentence, realizing either one of 2 functions. Either a subject attribute after copulas, copulative verbs like be, seem, appear, happen, feel, sound, taste, look, die, etc. This is very interesting. Very interesting for us the copulative verb phrase. Be is, that is, therefore functions as a subject attribute. Or an object attribute following a direct object. Selma made her mother very happy. So her mother is the direct object. Very happy refers to her mother, and therefore the adjective phrase very happy functions as an object attribute. As constituents of the phrase, see, they can function as pre-modifiers, post-modifiers, or discontinuous modifiers. Pre-modifiers of a noun most often cause adjective phrases most often associate with nouns. Salma voiced, that is, expressed a very interesting opinion. Very interesting, the adjective phrase pre-modifies the head noun opinion. As a post-modifier of a noun, Salma voiced an opinion different from yours. Opinion is the head noun of the noun phrase. Different from yours is an adjective phrase that post-modifies the head opinion. As a discontinuous modifier of a noun, Selma bought a similar blouse to Dana's. What did Selma buy? A blouse. What about this blouse? It is similar to Dana's. Originally, similar to Dana's was a post-modifier, but it's been interrupted by the head noun blouse, and therefore we have gotten a discontinuous modifier because it is discontinued, interrupted by means of the head of the noun phrase. On to the adverb phrase. Like in the adjective phrase, the only obligatory function in the adverb phrase is the head, and it is always an adverb. But the head adverb can be accompanied by means of a modifier, a pre-modifier, post-modifier, or a discontinuous modifier. What are the syntactic functions of adverb phrases? Well, adverb phrases may be used as constituents of the sentence where they realize either one function of the following three functions. Either an adverbial adjunct where it is obligatory for the completion of the meaning of the sentence. Salma drives very carefully. Very carefully functions as an adverbial adjunct because it is obligatory. It makes a lot of difference to say Salma drives as opposed to Salma drives very carefully. Adverbial disjunct. Honestly, I do not believe her. Honestly is disjoint from the rest of the sentence, separated from the rest of the sentence. It expresses the speaker's attitude towards what he is saying or what she is saying towards his feelings towards what he is saying, and therefore it is optional and can be deleted. That is why we say it functions as an adverbial disjunct. An adverbial conjunct, like an adverbial adjunct, is obligatory, but it links or relates in between two ideas, i.e. two meanings. Susan studied hard on the one hand. She did not make it on the other. Nevertheless, the adverb phrase comes and conjoins or links in between these two sentences, i.e. these two ideas. So we say it functions as an adverbial conjunct. Now, as constituents of the phrase, adverb phrases function as pre-modifiers, post-modifiers, or discontinuous modifiers. When pre-modifiers, most often they intensify adjectives and adverbs, but less commonly they can describe nouns and prepositions. So that, coming to nouns, they played a game. What kind of game? An away game. Away is the adverb phrase that pre-modifies the head down game. An adjective, Selma is very clever. Selma is clever. How clever is Selma? Very clever. The adverb phrase very pre-modifies clever. Pre-modifying an adverb. Selma drives carefully. How carefully does she drive? Very carefully. So the adverb phrase very pre-modifies the head adverb carefully. Pre-modifying a preposition. Selma is standing behind you. How far behind you is she standing? Exactly. So the adverb phrase exactly pre-modifies the preposition behind. As a post-modifier, most often, of course, they post-modify adjectives and adverbs, of course. Less commonly, a noun. Selma is studying for the exam ahead. Ahead post-modifies the head noun exam. Now, when post-modifying an adjective or an adverb, the adverb phrase is always the adverb enough. Selma is clever. How clever is Selma? Enough. Selma drives carefully. How carefully does she drive? Enough, to a great extent. As a discontinuous modifier, adverb phrase can discontinuously modify an adjective, the head of an adjective phrase, or an adverb. It was so hot that I could not or I couldn't sleep. See, the head of the adjective phrase is hot. The adverb phrase made up of the intensifying adverb so plus the finite that close realizes the function discontinuous modifier. A discontinuous modifier of an adverb. The children were treated cruelly. How cruelly were they treated? So cruelly that they still have nightmares. The head of the adverb phrase, so cruelly that they still have nightmares, is the adverb cruelly. The adverb phrase made up of the intensifying adverb so plus the finite clause realizes the function discontinuous modifier. Done with noun phrases, adjective phrase, and adverb phrase. Now on to the verb phrase. The verb phrase has one obligatory element, like in the case of the three previous phrases, and that is the lexical verb, which is the dominant number. However, the lexical verb may preceded by one or more auxiliary verbs, and these auxiliary verbs are optional. Okay? So now, what are the grammatical features associating with the verb phrase? These are in fact, features or categories: tense, aspect, voice, mood, and concord. By tense is meant present or past. That is present or past. Aspect, auxiliary of the perfective aspect, that is have plus en, or auxiliary of the progressive aspect, be plus ing. Voice, auxiliary, either the passive voice, where you have the auxiliary of the passive voice, be plus en, or you have the verb phrase in the active voice. Mood, we have three moods: indicative, subjunctive, and imperative. By indicative is meant agreement in between the verb and the subject. Notice, Selma studies English. I do not say Selma study English, never. Okay, so there is agreement in between the verb and the subject. In the subjunctive, there is no agreement in between the verb and the subject. Notice, I recommend that Selma study English. I did not say, and I cannot say, I recommend that Selma studies English. Why? Because, you see, the verb in here, study, is in the subjunctive mood. That is, it lacks agreement with the verb, because underlyingly, there is a putative should. That is, I recommend that Selma should study English. And then the imperative sentence. You see, whereas in the indicative mood and in the subjunctive mood, both the subject and the verb are available. In the imperative sentence, only the verb or the verb phrase is available. So too, and it is identical with the base form. Open your books. Concord, that is subject-verb agreement. In English, verbs agree with their subjects in person and number, but there is no agreement in gender. That is, the verb does not change like in Arabic if the subject is male or female. So, agreement obtains most often in the present tense in English, and in the past tense only when there is a verb to be, was or were. Now, what are the syntactic functions of the verb phrase? Every verb phrase always functions as a predicator. Verb phrases always realize one function, and that is the function predicator. In turn, the function predicator is always realized by verb phrases. This is the only category and the only function which correspond to each other. Otherwise, there is no one-to-one correspondence in between categories and functions. This only obtains in the case of verb phrases and the function predicator. Downstairs we have examples of verb phrases in the active voice and in the passive voice, because we can have 16 possible verbal sequences in the active voice, 8 in the present tense, as you can see under active voice, and 8 in the past tense. And we can have in the passive voice, there are 16 possible counterparts, as you can see in the examples. Now, verb phrases can also be referred to as finite or non-finite. The finite verb phrases are those verb phrases that occur in the past tense form or in the present tense form. The non-finite forms of verb phrases are those that occur in the two infinitival forms, base forms, ed2 or en forms, that is the past participial form, or the ing form, that is the present participial form. Now, what are the order of constituents in the verb phrase? In fact, the order is as follows. In finite verb phrases, so you have first tense, present or past. Then, this is obligatory. That's in the finite verb phrase. But you can have a modal auxiliary verb, optionally. You can have the auxiliary of the perfective aspect, have plus en, optionally. You can have the auxiliary of the progressive aspect, be plus ing, optionally. You can have the auxiliary of the of the passive voice, optionally. And finally, you should have the lexical verb. In other words, two elements only are obligatory in the verb phrase. Tense, which could be either present or past, and the lexical verb. All other elements are optional in a finite verb phrase. In an infinite verb phrase, no tense markers, no modal auxiliaries, of course. You can only have, um, the auxiliary of the perfective aspect, in the infinitival forms or the ing forms, auxiliary of the progressive aspect, auxiliary of the passive voice be plus en, and you should have a lexical verb, like in the finite forms. Okay, but the lexical verb, you see, is in the base form. Okay, now then we move on to the prepositional phrase. In the prepositional phrase, two members are always obligatory. The function prepositional, always realized by prepositions, and the function prepositional complement. To these two obligatory functions, you can add optionally the function pre-modifier. Now, what are the syntactic functions of prepositional phrases? A, as constituents of the sentence. Prepositional phrases most often realize essentially the three adverbial functions, adjuncts, disjuncts, and conjuncts, but they can realize other functions as subjects, subject attributes, object attributes also, and predicator complements. So as subjects, after the 15th of April would suit me better. Subject attribute, our candidate is in high spirits, that is, is, if you like, courageous, whatever. So can be replaced by means of an adjective phrase. Object attribute, they left the room in a mess, that is, they left the room messy. Object attribute. Predicator complement, Dina reminds me of Selma. So of Selma functions as a predicator complement. Now the basic functions, adverbial adjunct, I saw Selma in the mall. Where did you see Selma? In the mall. Adverbial disjunct, to my surprise, Huda did not make it. To my surprise expresses the speaker's attitude or feelings towards what he or she is saying, therefore it can be done without. That is why we say it functions as an adverbial disjunct. An adverbial conjunct, Huda studied hard. On the other hand, she did not make it. On the other hand, conjoins or links the two ideas, i.e. the two sentences. B, as constituents of the phrase, prepositional phrases can function as post modifiers of a noun. Selma lives in the city. Which city? Of Erbil. Post modifying city. Of an adjective, Selma is afraid of mice. Of mice post modifies the adjective afraid. Of an adverb, Selma lives away from home. From home post modifies the adverb away. Or they can also function as prepositional complements. The actors appeared from behind the stage. Where did the actors appear from? From behind the stage. So the prepositional phrase behind the stage functions as a prepositional complement to the preposition from. With this, we end our talk on the phrase. Study this and watch the video, read what is in the book, and come well prepared on Wednesday and do the exercises in the workbook. If you have any questions, you can raise your questions on Monday. Okay? I leave you now. Hope you do what I have asked you to do, to read the material in the textbook, watch the video, read the PDF, do the exercise in the workbook, come well prepared on Wednesday, and I wish you the best of luck. Bye bye for now.